Welcome to Essential Dialogues. You see these skyscrapers surviving major earthquakes. The kind that just make headlines. They stand strong, while buildings around them are crumbling. But then fast forward a few years, and that same building collapses, seemingly out of nowhere. What happened?
That's a good question.
It turns out that even those small earthquakes that we don't think much of can be a hidden threat, causing this damage that adds up over time. We're calling it the slow poison effect. And we'll be going into how that sneaky kind of damage weakens structures.
Yeah.
We're drawing insights from the research paper, the cumulative impact of repeated seismic events on structural integrity.
It is really interesting how we tend to focus on those big dramatic earthquakes. But it's the constant barrage of smaller tremors that most people don't even notice that can be silently chipping away at a building's integrity over time.
So it's not just about weathering that single big one.
Exactly. Imagine you're looking at a cross-section of a concrete column inside a building. Each time seismic waves, even from minor tremors, pass through, they create these stress cycles. Think of it like you're bending a metal ruler back and forth. You might not see a crack right away, but those repeated stresses lead to microcracks within the concrete and also weaken the steel reinforcement that's inside. And over time, these invisible fractures accumulate and really compromise that column's strength.
So it's like death by 1,000 cuts, but for buildings.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. To make matters worse, each tremor can also affect the very foundation a building sits on.
Oh, wow.
Let's say a structure is built on soft soil. With every tremor, the ground beneath shifts slightly, leading to this uneven settling. One corner might sink faster than the others, which causes cracks in the walls and throws off the entire structure's stability.
And I'm guessing this isn't something you could just easily fix with some patching and paint.
Unfortunately, no. The study that we're looking at here found that buildings constructed on soft soil experience on average 3 times faster degradation than those built on bedrock. So that highlights just how significant soil conditions are in this whole process. This hidden damage can go unnoticed for years, making it even more dangerous. People might unknowingly be living or working in a building that's slowly becoming a ticking time bomb.
Okay, this is starting to sound pretty alarming.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the materials themselves, but also what's going on beneath the surface, literally.
Precisely. It's the combination of that material fatigue, the foundation instability, and even joint fatigue. That's the wear and tear on the connections that hold a building together, like those between beams and columns. That makes this cumulative damage so insidious. It's often unseen until a larger earthquake hits, and by then the structure is far more vulnerable than anyone realizes.
So we're not just talking hypotheticals here. Are there real-world cases where this has actually happened?
Absolutely. The research highlights several examples, like the Northridge earthquake in California back in 1994. While the main quake was devastating, many buildings that appeared to have survived actually suffered further damage from the numerous aftershocks.
Oh, wow.
In essence, the repeated tremors exploited those existing weaknesses, leading to localized failures that wouldn't have happened in a structurally sound building.
So even if a building looks fine after a minor earthquake, there could be damage brewing beneath the surface.
Exactly. And perhaps one of the most striking examples comes from the 1995 Kobe earthquake in Japan.
Okay.
Post-earthquake analyses revealed a stark contrast. Buildings constructed before 1980, before modern seismic codes were implemented, experienced on average 3 times more damage than buildings built afterward. So that really highlights the impact of building codes and how they've evolved to address this cumulative damage.
Wow, 3 times more damage. That's a sobering statistic.
Is.
So this isn't just about surviving one big earthquake. It's about understanding how each tremor, big or small, contributes to a building's overall lifespan.
That's right. It's a shift from simply reacting to a major event to taking a more proactive approach, recognizing that every tremor plays a role in the long-term health of a structure.
All right, so we've established that this is a serious issue, but let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Who is most at risk from this slow poison effect? Is it just old buildings, or is there more to it?
Yeah, it's not just about age, though older buildings certainly face a higher risk. It's more about understanding the specific vulnerabilities that make certain structures susceptible to this type of damage over time.
So let's break it down. What are some of the red flags people should be looking out for? I'm picturing those classic brick buildings, the kind that give a city its character.
Yeah.
Are those the top of the list?
You're right to be concerned about those unreinforced masonry, meaning structures made of brick or stone without any steel support are particularly vulnerable. Think about those charming old brick facades you see. Each tremor, even a small one, can worsen existing cracks and create new ones, ultimately weakening the entire structure.
So those cracks aren't just an aesthetic issue. They're a potential sign of deeper problems.
Exactly. And it's not just brick buildings. Older concrete structures, especially those built before modern seismic codes became stricter, also pose a significant risk. They often lack ductility, meaning they're not designed to flex and bend during an earthquake.
So even though concrete seems like a sturdy material, it's the flexibility that's missing, making those older buildings more prone to cracking and damage.
Precisely. Imagine a dry twig snapping under pressure versus a green twig that can bend without breaking. Those older concrete frames are like the dry twig. They can't handle the repeated stress from earthquakes without fracturing.
You know, a lot of people assume that wooden buildings are the safest bet in earthquake-prone areas because of their flexibility.
Right.
Is that really the case?
Well, it's true that wood frame structures have a natural ability to sway and absorb some of the energy from an earthquake. They're not invincible. The key lies in the connections, the bracing, and how well those elements are designed to withstand repeated shaking. So even if the wood itself can flex, if the joints and supports aren't strong enough, the whole structure could still be compromised over time.
Absolutely. Think of it like a chain. Its strength is only as good as its weakest link. And let's not forget about the ground beneath our feet. Buildings on soft soil, like those near rivers or on filled land, are at significantly higher risk, regardless of what they're made of.
It's back to that wobbly table analogy. The ground itself amplifies the shaking, putting more stress on the building with each tremor.
Precisely. And this brings us to an important point. It's not just about reacting after a big earthquake. It's about proactively addressing these vulnerabilities no matter how small the tremors might seem.
Okay, so let's shift gears and talk about solutions. What can be done to mitigate this cumulative damage and make our buildings more resilient?
One of the most crucial steps is regular inspections by qualified structural engineers. Think of it like getting regular checkups at the doctor. Even if there are no visible signs of damage after an earthquake, a trained eye can detect subtle cracks, shifts, or other warning signs that indicate a potential problem. So it's about catching those small issues before they snowball into something bigger.
Exactly. Early detection can make a huge difference. For buildings that are already showing signs of wear and tear or are known to be vulnerable, retrofitting becomes essential.
What does that entail exactly?
Retrofitting involves strengthening the existing structure, essentially giving it a much-needed upgrade to withstand future earthquakes. This could involve a variety of techniques. Imagine steel jackets being wrapped around existing columns to reinforce them, or adding shear walls to provide extra support and resist lateral forces during shaking.
It sounds like we're giving these buildings a workout, but for their structural health.
That's a great way to think about it. We're essentially enhancing their ability to withstand those repeated stresses.
And what about those cases where the problem lies in the soil itself? Are we just stuck with whatever we're built on?
Not necessarily. There are techniques for soil stabilization aimed at improving the ground beneath a building to reduce the amplification of shaking during earthquakes.
So we're not just at the mercy of the ground beneath us. We can actually manipulate it to make our building safer.
Precisely. And of course, building codes play a crucial role. Modern codes, especially those adopted in earthquake-prone regions, incorporate stringent requirements for seismic resistance.
So it's not just about having good codes, but also making sure they're being followed and enforced.
Absolutely. Enforcement is critical. And that's where government agencies and regulatory bodies come in. They need to ensure that new buildings meet these standards and that older buildings are either retrofitted to comply or at least regularly inspected to identify any potential risks.
You've mentioned building codes a few times. How have they evolved in light of this understanding of cumulative damage?
There's a growing movement towards performance-based seismic design, a shift from simply ensuring a building doesn't collapse in a major earthquake to considering its overall performance over its entire lifespan, including the long-term effects of those smaller, more frequent tremors.
So it's a more holistic approach that takes into account the entire seismic history of a region, not just the big one-off events.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that every tremor, every little shake has the potential to contribute to a building's wear and tear and designing accordingly.
Okay, so we've outlined the problem, we've discussed the vulnerabilities, and we've explored some potential solutions.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people listening might be asking, why should I care? How does this affect me personally?
That's a crucial question.
Yep.
And it brings us to the bigger picture.
Yeah.
This isn't just about protecting individual buildings. It's about creating resilient communities that can withstand the long-term impacts of living in earthquake-prone areas.
So this goes beyond just my own home or workplace.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about schools, hospitals, power plants, transportation systems, all those critical pieces of infrastructure that we rely on for our daily lives. If those structures are vulnerable to cumulative damage, the consequences can be far-reaching.
It's like a domino effect. If one key structure fails, it can trigger a cascade of problems that disrupt entire communities.
Exactly. And the economic impact is significant as well. While proactive measures like inspections and retrofitting may have upfront costs, those pale in comparison to the potential costs of rebuilding after a major earthquake, not to mention the intangible costs of lost lives and livelihoods.
So it's a classic case of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Precisely. Investing in resilience now can save us a lot of pain and expense down the road.
This has been a real eye-opener. It shifted my perspective from just worrying about the big one to understanding that every tremor matters. But let's be realistic. Are we asking individuals to become structural engineers overnight? What can everyday people do to contribute to this culture of seismic resilience?
We don't need everyone to become structural engineers overnight, but raising awareness is key. It starts with understanding the risks and vulnerabilities specific to your area and the type of building you live or work in.
So step one is know what you're dealing with.
Exactly. Familiarize yourself with your building's history. When was it built? What kind of materials were used? Has it undergone any seismic retrofits? This information can really help you assess the level of risk and determine if further action is needed.
And if someone is concerned about their building, they should reach out to a professional.
Absolutely. A structural engineer can conduct a thorough inspection and give you recommendations that are tailored to your building's specific needs.
So knowledge is power, as they say.
Precisely. And it's not just about individual actions. We can advocate for stronger building codes and policies that prioritize seismic resilience in our communities, support initiatives that promote retrofits, especially for critical infrastructure like schools and hospitals.
So it's about creating this culture of safety and preparedness, where we're not just reacting to disasters, but we're actively working to prevent them.
You've hit the nail on the head. That shifting mindset from reactive to proactive is crucial for building truly resilient communities.
This deep dive has been really eye-opening for me. It's made me realize that earthquake safety isn't just about bracing for the big one. It's about recognizing the cumulative impact of every tremor, every little shake, and taking steps to mitigate those risks.
And remember, those smaller earthquakes, while they may not make headlines, can be like a slow-acting poison, gradually weakening the structures around us.
Yeah, but armed with this knowledge, we can make informed decisions to protect ourselves, our loved ones, and our communities. If you're listening to this and you start noticing those little cracks in the walls or you feel a slight tremor, don't just dismiss them. Think about the bigger picture, the cumulative effect of all those seemingly insignificant events.
It's a reminder that we live in a dynamic world, where the ground beneath our feet is constantly shifting. But by understanding the forces at play and taking these proactive steps, we can build a safer and more resilient future.
I think that's a powerful message to end on. We might not be able to control when or where earthquakes strike, but we can control how we prepare for them and how we build our world to withstand those forces. And that's what Essential Dialogues is all about, exploring those crucial conversations that can help us navigate a complex world.
Until next time.
If you found this deep dive insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Essential Dialogues for more fascinating explorations of topics that matter.